Welcome back to another Explainer. Today, we're diving into something truly fascinating and honestly pretty high stakes. We're going to look at a silent threat that is literally hiding in plain sight, right inside the critical infrastructure you and I rely on every single day. We usually picture cyber threats as these abstract lines of malicious code going after our emails or bank accounts, right? But today, we're talking about the physical world. So let me ask you, what do you think is the most dangerous exposed device on the internet? If you had to guess, you'd probably say, I don't know, a military server, a major bank's database, or maybe some highly advanced power grid control switch. But what if I told you the answer involves a completely mundane, everyday piece of hardware, something so boring you'd walk right past it without a second glance? And yet, this exact device has recently triggered a massive joint federal security panic.
Okay, let's dive right into this. The device we're talking about is an automatic tank gauge, or an ATG for short. At its core, it's really just a simple monitor. It sits inside a storage tank and measures what's going on in there: volume, liquid level, pressure, temperature, the whole shebang. It doesn't actually open valves or start pumps on its own. It literally just sits there and reports data. So, why on earth is this simple little gauge the star of our explainer today? Well, because in June 2026, things escalated dramatically. We saw this unprecedented joint warning come out from CISA, the NSA, the FBI, the Department of Energy, basically the entire alphabet soup of federal agencies. They had to frantically urge infrastructure operators all across the U.S. that cyber threat actors were actively compromising these internet-exposed tank gauges. This absolutely was not a drill. It was a glaring vulnerability across our critical systems.
Which brings us to Section 1, the hidden infrastructure threat. More than just gas stations.
Because, we naturally think of fuel and petroleum when someone mentions storage tanks, right? But just think about the sheer variety of materials these ATGs monitor. We're talking industrial chemicals, the water treatment chemicals that literally make our drinking water safe, agricultural products, and even wastewater and sewage. The ripple effects here are just staggering. If these gauges get compromised, we're not just talking about a delayed gas delivery. It could mean toxic chemical spills, contaminated municipal water supplies, or huge agricultural supply chain disasters.
All right, moving on to Section 2, when IT met OT, the end of physical isolation. To understand how we ended up here, cybersecurity expert Damon Small from Xscape Inc. paints this really vivid picture of what he calls the before time. A couple of decades ago, operational technology, the OT systems, were totally 100% segregated from IT and the internet. If you wanted to hack them, you couldn't just sit in a dark basement halfway across the globe. You literally had to jump a barbed wire fence. And as Damon jokingly but very accurately points out, you'd probably be met with a guard, a gun, and a very angry dog. The physical security was the cybersecurity.
But then we get the IT/OT convergence. Businesses realized, hey, if we connect these isolated physical machines to our internet-facing business networks, we can be way more efficient. And they were right. They got real-time telemetry, better inventory management, remote monitoring. It makes total business sense. But in doing so, they accidentally built a digital bridge right over that fence. They bypassed the guard and the dog entirely. The attack surface just blew up overnight.
So let's look at Section 3, a clash of priorities, and why fixing this is so hard. You're probably thinking, okay, if they're exposed, just patch them, throw password on there. But this brilliantly illustrates a concept called the triad flip. Look at the IT world, the world of emails and databases. Their absolute top priority is confidentiality. You have to keep secrets safe. Then comes integrity, then availability. But flip over to the operational technology world, the OT world of pipelines and water plants, and it is completely backward. Availability is number one. Keeping those physical machines running safely is everything. Then integrity and confidentiality is dead last. In operational technology, availability is king. Think about it. If an IT guy needs to take a server offline for an hour to install a patch, it's annoying, sure, but it's fine. But if you take a chemical plant's safety monitoring system offline for an hour, that could cause massive safety hazards or cost millions of dollars in lost revenue. As Damon Small points out, OT operators aren't lazy, and they aren't ignoring security. Their mission is just fundamentally different. They simply cannot afford downtime. Moving along to Section 4, the danger of bad data. Because the real threat isn't a hacked valve. This clash of priorities sets the stage for a really chilling concept known as denial of view. Now, we've all heard of denial of service, right? When a website crashes from too much traffic. But denial of view is way more sinister.
Remember, an ATG doesn't directly control a pump, so a hacker doesn't actually need to hack the pump. They just manipulate the data the gauge is reporting. They blind the operator. Or, even worse, they feed the operator lies. Damon Small warns that if an operator is making decisions based on bad data, they might completely fail to recognize a massive safety situation. Think about it. If your screen goes blank, you immediately know something's wrong, right? You send someone out with a clipboard to physically check the tank. But if your screen says everything is perfectly normal, the pressure is great, the temperature is fine, you just sit back and drink your coffee. Meanwhile, in reality, a disaster is brewing. Fake normal readings are incredibly dangerous.
And tragically, this isn't just a theoretical white paper concept. Damon shared a real-world tragedy from Houston where bad telemetry, fake data, caused the vessel to overfill. Because the data on the screen was wrong, the operators had no idea the pressure was building up to critical levels. The vessel ended up exploding, leading to a tragic loss of life. It absolutely proves that manipulated data in energy or water treatment can have lethal, physical consequences. Which brings us to our final part, Section 5. Preparing for denial of view. How organizations can actually protect themselves against this.
So, the crucial point here for defenders is that they must intimately understand what good looks like. Before you could ever hope to spot anomalous, manipulated data, you have to know your own operational rhythms like the back of your hand. You need to know your normal communication patterns, typical data ranges, standard login times. Because honestly, if you don't know exactly what your normal baseline is, you are never going to realize when a hacker is feeding you a really convincing fake.
To actually harden these systems, there are a few very clear, actionable steps. Number 1, just remove unnecessary internet exposure. If a tank doesn't absolutely need to be on the public internet, take it off. Number 2, for the love of everything, replace those default vendor passwords. Number 3, closely monitor the choke points where your IT business network connects to the OT physical network. And number 4, and this is vital, establish manual physical verification plans. If the digital screen starts acting weird or lies to you, teams must already know exactly who is putting on a hard hat and walking out to that tank to check it manually.
Ultimately, fixing this whole mess requires a massive cultural shift. IT and OT teams absolutely have to support each other. IT professionals need to learn that, hey, you can't just reboot a chemical refinery in the middle of the day. They have to respect those physical safety constraints. But on the flip side, OT professionals really need to recognize that threats are borderless now. They're coming from across the globe, not just someone hopping a chain link fence. They have got to work together to survive this convergence.
I want to leave you with a final thought to chew on. Think about the infrastructure in your own city, or even just the data you rely on every day in your own life or business. If your systems lied to you right now, if everything looked perfectly normal on your screen but was actually failing in the real world, how long would it take you to notice? It's a pretty heavy reminder of just how fragile and data-dependent our modern world really is. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and as always, keep questioning the data.